Welcome back, everyone, to the Awful Takes podcast, music album review. Thank you guys for joining us. Just want to get across how we kind of structure our music reviews. We recommend to each other albums, that are personal to us, that we have a deep appreciation for, and we go in song by song and just kind of break each track down. I think it is a little different than how most people do album reviews. We try to stay away from giving albums ratings or scoring just because I feel like it really kind of undermines the music, We like to talk more kind of in depth, the feelings and thoughts that get brought up when you're listening to your favorite songs. And I think at the end of the day, just kind of throwing a number on it and calling it done kind of does the album a disservice, because I know with me, music can just change and you can listen to certain songs and you may not like it at first and then you end up liking it, so I want to stay away from that. And also I like giving each song the time of day. Sometimes I'll listen to album reviews and my favorite songs, they just don't even mention. And then I'm just kind of like, oh, I guess that's it. But yeah, so that's kind of how we do our album reviews. Just wanted to give you guys a little forewarning. If you're joining us on YouTube, Spotify, we have time descriptions. If you want to skip ahead to certain parts, feel free to do so. But first of all, just thank you for being here. My name is Nabaahi. I'm one of the hosts.
Hello, I'm Wallied from Circuita Productions. I'm the other host.
And we are talking about a very kind of special album for me. Wallied, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well, just taking it easy. It's a nice little lazy Sunday for me personally.
Yeah. Right now we're kind of knee deep in summer, so
Crazy.
This is kind of my busy time of year, but it is nice to kind of just take a couple hours on the weekend and just kind of relax and talk about, some of the stuff that we love. So I have a very special album that has been, part of my life for the longest time. It's something that really shaped who I am today. It just sounds weird to say that, it's so weird to give music that power, but sometimes it happens, sometimes you have your favorite album and you always go back to it and you listen to it, not only when it first comes out, but at different stages in your life. And you kind of grow with the music, that's such a profound feeling. But yeah, we're talking about Blink-182's self-titled record. There's a lot of discussion in the fan community. Either this album is referred to as the self-titled record or the Untitled record. This came out in 2003, kind of late 2003. I believe it was around November. And it was kind of a big moment in music when this album was coming out. So Blink-182 has just a long history. They were formed, early 90s, and they had a hand in, changing the direction and kind of, ushering in this kind of new era of pop punk, which everyone refers to. Obviously, you had all the older punk influences that were going on, and they were influencing a lot of young listeners, And now that those people were growing up, they had those appreciation for that music, but they wanted to draw inspiration from it, but also kind of pull it elsewhere, Some people like it, some people don't, That's totally fine. I will say with a lot of Blink's 90s music, it does sound, very 90s, It has a lot of those catchy riffs, catchy melodies, not something that's too melodically intense, just kind of those 4-chord songs, things like that. However, there was a pivotal moment with this band, and we're going to get into it throughout this whole thing. I'm sorry. This is again, I just want to preference, this is such a big thing for me. I know a lot about the whole history of Blink, so I kind of feel the need to kind of explain this, to kind of describe my headspace with this album. So I apologize, Wallied.
No, you're fine. Don't apologize.
But so in the 90s, they had their first couple records that were modestly successful. They had a few radio hits and things like that. But they had a pivotal moment where they collaborated with a producer by the name of Jerry Finn, and he kind of helped bring the best out of Blink-182. And sometimes you hear that brought up in music, especially now more so, you hear the title of producer and things like that. But I will say for me with Blink in general, this is kind of the one time where I heard like a producer being mentioned. It was so strange, like hearing it in interviews. They called Jerry Finn the unofficial fourth member of Blink-182. And I had never heard artists describe someone in that way. And as a kid, I was just like, okay, wait, who is this guy? What does he do? It kind of changed my whole world on music and how, there's so many factors that go into it. So their first album with Jerry Finn, massively successful. That's where they had the radio hits, What's My Age Again, All the Small Things. They were just, rising in popularity. And then they followed up that record with another one. Again, same thing, just massive hits. They were just, the trend just wasn't stopping. They were just reaching, their peak popularity. And, before this record came out, there was kind of like a brief period where one member of the band went and did a side project. And because they went and did that side project, it was almost seen as like an attack on one of the other members in the band. He was like, well, we're making popular music together. Why do you feel the need to go out and do this solo thing? Like, he felt betrayed by that, and it seeded a lot of distrust, a lot of, angry feelings towards each other, that when this album was coming out, these guys were not seeing eye to eye. And it's so crazy to think like that and then see the music that it kind of created as like, whoa, like this is totally different, So when this album came out, it had the radio hits, but it sounded different. This album doesn't sound like their usual pop punk thing. It really kind of entered this alternative post-hardcore kind of emo thing. And it was just like such a drastic shift. I know a lot of people see this as their best album, but a lot of those fans who were, growing up with them with that early punk scene really don't like this. And they're like, what is this? This is just like something totally that goes against everything you guys did, and it's very interesting to see the stages in this band of, being progressive, growing up and writing something maybe a little bit more mature. Like on this album, they're not making the same jokes that they make on all their other albums. They're not, singing stupid songs about, just adolescence and things like that. I love those songs and I love all that music, but I just want people to realize like this was just such like a drastic step forward of like being progressive. And to me, to this day, I really haven't heard anything like this. Sorry, guys, for the little crash course, but we'll get into it as we go throughout the album. Wallied, you've heard me mention Blink-182. Like I'm never shy about it. Like I tell people Blink-182 is like me, like this is such a staple to who I am. And I know you've heard obviously their popular songs, but I kind of threw this album at you. I guess kind of first impressions, what was like going through your head,
Yeah, so for me, I'm not too familiar with a lot of Blink-182's material. I kind of, going through my head, I kind of made the assumption it was going to be something a little bit more similar to like the hits that I had heard, like on the radio or things like that. So this kind of took me a little bit by surprise, especially when you mentioned the Fugazi and Cure influence, because I never would have guessed in a million years like they would be influenced by those guys. But it's kind of interesting, like kind of listening to it. I was kind of taken by surprise how much I kind of enjoyed this album, and I was kind of like yeah, this is not something I would expect for a band like Blink-182. I was kind of expecting something more of like in the line of like something that's like super poppy and super like sugary and kind of like in your face, you know? So that was kind of what was going through my head, at least for when I turned on the first track and everything, and kind of my thoughts of expectations going into the record.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this band has quite the history. I just want to say, like, if there was ever like a movie made about this band, they would have such an interesting story of, you know, breaking up, getting back together, you know, having these thoughts of betrayal, things like that. And then also like starting a band so young. Like these guys started a band when they were in their late teens. Oh, wow. And, you know, to have that grow now into like this 40, almost 50-year legacy, like what does that look like? You know, like you start a band with, you know, friends that you have, but now what happens when, you know, record deals start happening, money starts coming in, like how do you keep intact that same energy that you had when you first found the band, you know? So interesting to me. So track 1 starts out right away, just high energy. This is a great song for me. It's called Feeling This. It's very different. Like this is like, if I could choose what pop punk could sound like right now, I would say use this song as like a template, you know? This song's catchy, but it's also different. Like this song really, it has those, you know, melodies and things and hooks that you're used to with Blink, but it also kind of just does things in like a different way. Like the verses, they're doing like these trade vocals. You have Mark singing these kind of aggressive lines and everything. And then you just have our Tom, and then you have Mark just saying, you know, I'm feeling this in between the verses. And it's just like, this is structured just like totally different, you know? And then it goes into this catchy chorus, you know, the guitar riffs are just, you know, amazing. And the drums just sound like something totally different, you know? I guess that does kind of bring into conversation Jerry Finn's recording style, you know? This whole album, well, most of the album, it was created in a house, you know. Okay. They had this family that they leased out their house. So the family went on vacation for a couple months and they recorded this whole album, most of it anyways, in this house. Oh, wow. And, you know, they would put drums in the bathtub. They would, you know, hear how that echo would sound. Jerry Finn was super, meticulous with how he wanted his sounds. There's been multiple times where artists have said, it would take Jerry Finn just, you know, hours to find out how he would want a certain cymbal to sound. And it's like, wait, what? Like, and very it's like
detailed.
Yeah. They're like, that's how meticulous he was. He would, you know, just to the most smallest detail, he would try to figure out how he wanted each instrument to sound, how to layer everything. And keep in mind, guys, this is a time where analog was still a thing. Jerry Finn was still using analog. He wasn't using any kind of digital stuff, nothing like that. So I can't imagine the amount of, intensity that had to take place while recording this album. But this song is just so, you know, different than like anything I've ever heard pop punk kind of sound like. And I still feel like I haven't heard something sound like this in a while. And it just is super catchy and just super like, again, just different, you know, like even just thinking of the stacked harmony outro, like when does that happen in a pop punk song anymore, you know? Yeah. And when has it sounded this good? Like that harmony outro with just the vocals, you know, and the instruments fade out and it's just like these stacked vocals just trading back and forth. I'm just like, holy shit, this is like awesome. Wallied, feeling this, what were you thinking with this song?
Well, I was feeling this song.
Nice.
No, it's good. I really enjoyed it. I loved like the flanger. That really shocked me at the beginning.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting, like to hear flanger on a song like this. You mentioned the vocals overlapping at the end. I love how they just overlap and they like progress throughout the track. That was great. I thought the chorus was really great too. It was probably like one of the catchier choruses I've heard on the album for sure. I will say though, some of the high pitched vocals in the verses were a bit of a turnoff for me, but I think as the album kind of went along, I did kind of grow on me a bit, but it was a bit of like a kind of jarring listening to it, like for a first time and everything. Yeah. And it did kind of feel like a little too angsty for me at times, but I thought overall like the vocals on the verses were all right, but I loved them in the chorus.
It really goes for it. Like, again, the way this song is structured, like it's just insane. And there's just different, like Wallied mentioned with the flanger in the beginning with the drums. And then in the chorus, you have like this cowbell, keeping like a constant kind of like beat in there. And it's just like all these elements just kind of come together and just form like this super like sounds like stuff we've heard, but it also sounds like it's pulling it elsewhere, and I can imagine listening to this as like a Blink fan and just being like, holy crap, like this is new, like this is different.
Sure.
But it doesn't also, I want to say, it doesn't sound like those normal 2000 hits, I wouldn't really pinpoint. If I just heard this song and I had to guess when it was made, I feel like I couldn't really pin it down.
It kind of has like a surprisingly timeless feeling to it, which I wasn't expecting either. I kind of expected like it was going to have like a bit of like dated production considering when it came out and everything like that. So that was also like a big surprise too, also. And kind of you now mentioning like the producer and everything and how meticulous it is, it's like actually makes a lot of sense for kind of why it has that like timeless feeling to it.
One thing I want to mention is the bridge. Like Mark just goes off for bars on this song. Like it's just crazy. Like after the chorus, he comes in, this place was never the same again. After you came and went, how could you say you met anything different to anyone standing alone on the street with a cigarette on the first night we met? Like just even those first 4 lines, I'm like, holy shit. Like, how do you come up with that? And then he just keeps going, and it's amazing. I'm just like, holy crap. Like this, the lyrics on this song are just so interesting. One of the fun facts I want to mention with this song, Jerry Finn, they had the base idea of the song and how they wanted it, but they were having a hard time kind of nailing down the lyrics. So he was like, the two kind of major songwriters, Tom and Mark, he told Tom, I want you to go in this room and write something out. And he told Mark, I want you to go in this room and write something out. And then we'll come back together and we'll see how it went, And that's really interesting. And it's kind of funny, but of course, Mark and Tom, when they came back, they're like, oh, we just kind of wrote something about sex, and Tom was like the very like, vulgar, kind of euphoric side of sex. Mark's chorus and everything was like the more kind of romantic side of it, the more kind of emotional side of it. And that's so interesting to then just come back and you kind of put the two together. It's like, okay, wow, that actually is really, really interesting, but that's still to me just like such a cool story.
Wow.
But yeah, this song's great. Like, it's just for me, just like, again, like, I've never grown tired of listening to this song, and I don't know what it is. Like, I can just always put this song on and I'm immediately in a better mood,
Nice.
All right. The next song, Obvious. This one's a very interesting choice for like a song follow-up to like such a, kind of pop opening like that. This song just takes it in this super dark direction. Honestly, this song's very kind of emotionally, driven, and it's just super like, kind of encompasses the darker side of, being in like a relationship and things like that. And kind of taking that time to move on. and they match that energy with these aggressive guitars right away. It's just these guitars coming in, and the energy just does not stop throughout this whole song. And again, this doesn't sound like the usual Blink-182 that we had heard for the past, 10 years. This was just like, what is this? How do I react to this? This is very angsty, and obviously very much of like that kind of emo side of music,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like the lyrics kind of touch on something maybe a little bit different,
Yeah.
I think now with punk and everything, they're still afraid to kind of go in this direction that this song does. I still feel like now with punk and everything, still very safe. It's still very much like just kind of the base lines of emotions, surface level. And it's just like, go deeper, go into that dark area, that's what we love, I mean, for me, Wallied, what were you thinking with Obvious?
Yeah, I really loved this. It was just a surprise change of pace for sure that I just wasn't expecting. A lot darker for sure, but I also really just loved how passionate it was. I loved the singing a little bit more on this track. Mm-hmm. I loved how fast paced it was. That was also like a big shocker for me because the first track is, it's a little bit more of like a slow burn opening, but this one was a lot more like fast paced, which I really love. I love a lot. My favorite kind of punk music is usually pretty fast paced, so I usually love that a lot. For me, I guess it felt like you're kind of like in an argument and you're kind of like venting with this person. That's kind of like the emotion I felt listening to this song. Mm-hmm. And I love the line. One of my favorite lines on this track is, how do we fix this if we never had vision? Mm-hmm. Something about that line to me just hits so hard, because it's like, for me, I would say it just shows how love can be so impulsive and how you're not really thinking about a lot of these decisions and everything. Mm-hmm. And I think I think it perfectly encapsulates it so well in that line that it's just like, God, that is very hard hitting. Yeah.
And then to go from obviously the super, euphoric side of love with that first track to then just almost immediately follow it up and flip the coin. And now you're on the other side of this. Oh no, now this is the dark side of being in love. It's just like, wait, we're 2 tracks in, like, holy shit. Most typical albums, I feel like they would kind of take their time.
Slow progression, change of pace. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. So I don't know. For me, that's part of why I love this track. And I love the sequencing of this album in general. Mm-hmm. It's just super like hits emotions throughout the whole album. It's just like, whoa, like, where is this going? I definitely love the outro. Again, they do something similar with Feeling This. They have like these kind of stacked vocals and everything, but it is kind of all just Tom, He's got this, at times like this, it's obvious, but then he stacks that on top of, and I saw you again and again. How do we fix this if we never had vision? And just the way the melodies stack and kind of complement each other. I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. This is just so good,
It's shocking.
Yeah. And then the fact that this track is under 3 minutes, I would feel like a more personal song like this would probably take its time more.
Yeah, it would be more progressive, but it's kind of shocking like how quick it is. I'm like, I kind of wish it was a little longer.
I know.
Point. So I'm like, dang, this song is so good. But no, it's still really great. I still really love the track though.
All right, next track. One of their most popular songs, I don't know what else we can say that might add to the conversation, but we'll talk about it.
Okay.
It's I Miss You. I mean, everyone's heard this song by this point. It's been played to death.
It's been memed.
Yeah, it's been memed. Granted, like, I still personally really love this song. I will say this is the first song I heard of Blink-182 in general.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my brother had a friend in middle school at the time. She gave him this CD and was like, listen to it. I want you to, this band's awesome. And an album just came out or whatever. So he, got it and he brought it home. And I remember she like told him, listen to track 3 or whatever, if I'm remembering this right. And I was there kind of in the room when he put this on. And right away, it's just like, this is so different, you know, like it has like these drums, it has these acoustic guitars, it has like these violins.
It's more ballad like for sure.
Yeah, and it's just like, whoa, like I remember hearing it, I was just like, what is this, you know? And you got Tom singing in this high register, you have Mark doing like these deep vocals, you know, and then the chorus is just, you know, this I miss you, and it's just like, what is this, you know? Honestly, like young me really couldn't wrap my head around this song, you know? Granted, I will say at the time I was like 6 when this album came out. Oh, wow. So I'm just like, nice. I didn't know what the music really was, or like the emotion it conveyed, you know, but I remember just being like, this is cool. I really was just like, this is kind of stuck with me, you know. Wallied, I Miss You. You've heard this song. Yeah.
I don't know. This one, maybe it's just because I've heard it so much, or maybe it's just because of the meme. So, where are you? It's okay.
Yeah.
I think it's an okay track. I really love the instrumental on this song, especially the piano outro. The piano outro is fantastic.
Yeah.
I love the vocals in the beginning, like with the deep vocals you were talking about. Yeah. I thought those were really great. You know, it's like kind of restraining itself back. But I feel like once the high pitched vocals like come in and everything, it just feels like super over dramatic to me. Like, again, like I get what it's going for and I can appreciate it, but I just felt like it didn't really work for me too much, unfortunately.
I think with this song, it's interesting to mention that there are those instances in music where a song is created and it's really kind of engineered to attach itself to the mainstream audiences, you know. But there are those rare instances, not rare, but, you know, kind of sporadic instances where the mainstream finds those songs on their own, you know. This song, I will say, I don't feel like it was specifically designed to be this pop hit that it is now, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like the mainstream really kind of attached to this song in an interesting way and really just kind of made it popular because, again, like you have I Miss You, this is like one of their top songs, but then you look at their other stuff like What's My Age Again, Damn It,
it's very
all
different.
The small things, it is different, and it's just like, wait, what happened with this song, you know? So I think that's interesting to mention. I feel like as much as this song's been memed, as much as this song has been, you know, it's kind of a cultural moment now. And it's like this bigger than the band music's moment, you know?
Right.
It's interesting to kind of think that I don't think that was their intention while writing this song. I think this probably was meant to be like a more personal,
intimate song.
Yeah.
And it's funny hearing it like now in like the context of the album, because I've heard it so much as just like the single or from like a meme or something like that. So it's kind of fascinating to hear it now in like the context of the album. And it does kind of work, but it's just, again, I would just say like my biggest issue would just be those high pitched kind of vocals. I think it takes it a little bit too far for me.
I will say that first verse, some of the best lyrics and rhyme schemes, the whole hello there, the angel from my nightmare, the shadow in the background of the morgue, the unsuspecting victim, darkness in the valley, we can live like Jack and Sally if we want. That was, granted, some people might say that line's a little cheesy, but I think it's cool. I really like it.
She loves Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
And then the follow-up, we'll have Halloween on Christmas, and in the night we'll wish this never ends. Like, that's just... I feel like at one point while you're writing this song, like I feel like I just couldn't imagine like, what do we want the chorus to sound like? Like that verse was super good. How do we write a chorus to this? How do we write and it's just like, I have such a respect for artists when you've tapped on something great and now you have to follow that up. Like how do artists do that?
Right.
Like that's such a crazy challenge, you know? Love the acoustic guitars, love the bass. I love the build up with the chorus, you know, the little build up of the chords, you know, with the guitars. The bass kind of goes first with this build up, guitars kind of follow behind. And then the drum is just a loop throughout the whole song, kind of provides like this just constant beat, you know, it's just really great. But yeah, I mean, I Miss You. We all know what it is, you know. All right. Then we get into Violence. Man, this is, again, just different.
Change of pace.
Again, I still listen to the song and I'm like, this still just doesn't sound like 2000s music. This just sounds different. And even in today's standards, I'm just like,
could have came out today and I probably would have believed you.
Yeah. It starts out with this kind of like beat driving the song. And I don't know if it's like a sample or something. And then these guitars kind of come in. Just kind of very weird startup to a song, you know? And it goes through this whole this whole instrumental buildup, you know? And then the verses come in, it drowns all of it out. And you're kind of left with like this little bit of like anxious feeling of like, wait, what's going to happen, you know? And then these vocals come in. It's like these stacked vocals. And they just sound really kind of like haunting, and just like, what the heck? And it goes through these whole verses. 6 bottles went down the drain. 1 hour is a waste of time. I'd ask if you feel the same. Still pushing that chance to try. And it just goes through like this whole weird verse. And I'm just like, what am I listening to?
Yeah.
Wallied, what were you thinking with Violence?
I really liked this one a lot, for sure. I loved the energy of the track a lot. The verses were great. I loved the instrumental buildup at the beginning. That was really awesome. The catchy hook was fantastic. That's one thing I think this album does really well that I'll mention is like the choruses are just really, really catchy. Like they really just get stuck in your head, you know, which I think is a very hard thing to pull off, especially for an album like this.
Stuck in your head.
Yep. And honestly, it's so funny because it kind of juxtaposes itself where I feel like the lyrics are just honestly really sad. And it feels like almost like somebody going like in a downward spiral. It feels like, you know, you mentioning with like the bottles and everything, it feels like maybe like an addiction or maybe like alcoholism or something like that. But I really liked it a lot. This was a really great track and it was just a really just bizarre, jarring pace after hearing I Miss You. Yeah,
no, it totally like this song and obvious sandwich I Miss You in such a strange way. Like I swear if I played these 3 songs for someone, I feel like no one would guess these are on the same album if they didn't know who this band was.
Right. Know? Yeah.
It's just super different. Like I remember once my brother said he was listening to music and it was this song playing and some girl was like, what are you listening to? Saw his headphones in and he gave it to her and it was just these verses and she was like, what is this? Out of context. And then he's like, no, you got to wait for the chorus. And the chorus comes in. Sounds more like a traditional song. And obviously just the lines like Violence, You Have Me, Forever and After. That's great. You know, I will say I wish maybe we had a little more vocals kind of in the outro. It does kind of repeat itself a little bit. But again, I think that statement's strong enough to where, okay, maybe you didn't need anything else.
Right, yeah.
But again, song structure, everything like that. When I think of experimental, I think of songs like this, you know, like this just sounds super experimental, especially for, again, a band that's built on this legacy to kind of take this step.
It's a risk.
It's a risk. That is a very big risk.
You're going to alienate a lot of fans doing it, but the fact you can take that risk and it still pulls it off really well. It's like such a great feat in of itself that I don't think a lot of people realize.
Yeah. No, I agree. And granted, I think now artists do kind of do stuff like that, maybe a little more so now. They kind of, you know, change genres, things like that. But I think this album really had that popular, you know, following, and to see that drastic change was a lot, you know, like, it's weird. Sometimes I'll see certain hip hop rap artists, you know, mention this album as like,
oh really?
Yeah. And it's just like, wait, what the heck? You know, granted, it's cool to hear where influences come from. And sometimes you can never pin it down. It's like, well, I don't really hear that in the music, but to the artists, they know where the influence is being put at, you know, and that's very interesting. Next track, we get into an interlude, Stockholm Syndrome interlude. It has this whole lyrical passage going through it that has been said that Mark, one of the co-writers and bassist of the band and co-vocalist, This was a letter that his grandpa wrote to his grandmother during World War II.
Oh, wow.
So this whole kind of passage is just like kind of word for word that this letter, and man, this is like very interesting. It's very dark, very just kind of crazy. But man, I love this interlude. This is very different, and it leads into the main song in such an interesting way,
Yeah.
Wallied, what were you thinking with this interlude?
It's a great interlude for sure. It definitely helped me get a better idea of like kind of the overall concept and story of the album that it was going for. I didn't know too much about the grandpa thing. That's actually really crazy.
Yeah.
Hearing that kind of context. But I love the piano instrumental on this track. It's so beautiful. Maybe I'm just a sucker for piano instrumentals, but it's really great. It feels very for me at least, it feels very melancholic, which I really love a lot about the track. I guess I will say, with interludes, it's hard because I'm like, it leads up to the next track really well that I'm just kind of like, I just kind of wish the interlude was just the like first minute of the next track for me at least. But,
it is always hard when interludes have like their own title and things. And and then when you're listening to music, it's like, do I listen to the interlude? Do I skip it? But yeah, it is very interesting when that happens, I love this interlude, man. This is just like super emotional, especially knowing the context behind it, and then just reading the lyrics. It's hard, and I love that it kind of comes to this line of "I'm completely lost without you." Like that's
sad.
That's really sad, and that's a big statement.
I think it just shows how people, feel dependent on other people also, like you feel when you have this emotional connection with somebody, it can be very hard to like be by yourself and, have those feelings by yourself and everything. Like it's hard because it's like when you're with that person, you feel like they understand you and they're there for you emotionally and mentally.
Yeah. And I think sometimes life kind of pushes us through these dark moments, and you come out with just such a deep understanding, and you're able to convey all that in such a thought out way, and a lot of people will say like, oh, intellectual maturity, but sometimes beneath all that, you have a person who's really hurt. You have a person who has been kind of emotionally damaged by a situation, and to draw parallels to that with obviously one of the darkest times in our history, his grandpa going through this, writing this letter, man, you can just like, he must have been on the literal rock bottom that humanity can be at,
right.
And you're kind of reaching out to this other person, in this kind of hoping to get like a lifeline in a way, like that's big. And that's before you're able to just pull out your phone and call someone, like you're writing a letter that you hope will make it to this person. And at least they might know that one day you're going to come back. Like, I think a lot of people take for granted, the way the world is now, like we have such easy ways to communicate with each other. And we've gotten better at it of talking to each other and conveying emotions. But, back then, thinking inwardly was not really something that was super, known. A lot of times my grandpa never really talked about his feelings or things like that, And it's just crazy to think that the stuff they went through, So as much as some people might say, like, it does feel unnecessary, and it feels like, all right, this is kind of a little too dark and emotional, I still really like that they put that letter in this interlude. I think it adds a lot, and it adds a lot of weight and stuff. And again, drawing those parallels is just something that I wouldn't expect Blink-182 to do, the guys who have songs about dick jokes and things like that. Like, right, it's just like, wait, what the hell? What is this? But yeah, that's the interlude. And we get into Stockholm Syndrome, which is For me, it's one of my favorite songs on this record. It's so emotionally charged. It's so emotionally driven. The instrumentals are just amazing. It just starts out aggressive. You have these trading vocals, and it just sounds super angsty. And there's just like a feeling to it, you know? And then I just love how aggressive the verses are. And then when Mark comes in past that, it sounds more personal, you know? He kind of dials it back a little bit, and he's like singing a bit more melodically, you know? I'm so lost. I'm barely here. I wish I could explain myself, but words escape me, you know? And he just kind of changes it up past that whole intro, you know? And it's like, wait, what is this? You know, like that's so melodic and the melodies are super pleasing. And yet it's just so, you know, aggressive. And it's just such a nice kind of melding of the two, you know, really interesting. Wally, what were you thinking with Stockholm Syndrome?
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic vocals all around. For me, it feels like a roller coaster listening to this song. You know, I feel like such a wide array of emotions listening to it. I feel, you know, like energetic at one point, but I also feel kind of sad at one point, and I feel like kind of like passionate and kind of angry at some points with this track. And the instrumental is just fantastic. I love the reversed pianos that they do, which I wasn't expecting on a song like this. And the guitars in this are just so fuzzy. They're so distorted, but I love it so much. I feel like it really puts you into that kind of mental state, especially after hearing the interlude and everything. Yeah. It's just such a great, like, just explosion of emotions for me.
I think this is a good point, like Wallied mentioned, with, you know, the fuzz and everything, to kind of touch on this album's overall mix and mastering. Nothing at any point sounds overbearing in this, at least for me. Nothing really sounds like it's too high over the vocals, you know, as aggressive as the instrumentals and stuff get. The mastering and the mixing, you can just hear still every emotion. You can still hear the vocals super well, you know, and it's just like, wow, and nowadays sometimes I'll hear production and mixing and stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, I can't hear this, you know. It's buried, you know, and or sometimes songs just add too many layers to songs, and I'm just like, all right, like you really beat this to death. But it's so weird to think that, you know, music that was coming out in this era just had just like a certain quality to it that I feel like we've kind of lost maybe just a little bit overall with mixing and stuff, you know. This is just such a statement that you have all these layers to this song, yet it sounds cohesive, you know. Really love how that melody comes in, but then Mark immediately comes out with this aggressive yelling, you know, and just these crazy lyrics that I still to this day am just like, how did you write this? He comes in, you're cold with disappointment while I'm drowning in the next room. The last contagious victim of this plague between us. Like, what is that line? Like, how do you write that? Like, that's crazy. And then I'm sick with apprehension. I'm crippled from exhaustion, and I dread the moment when you finally come to kill me. There's a whole video of them recording this album, and just hearing him talk when he's writing this song. He's like, there's a lyric there where, you know, you have someone you care about, but like you're in the next room and you're drowning, you know? And it's just like, he's like, I gotta find, and it's just so interesting to think like, man, I couldn't imagine how it was to kind of organically grow this song in the moment. I mean, that just must have been such a process. But man, it's great. And love the trading vocals. Tom, you know, this is the first, and then Mark, thing I remember. I just love how they complement each other. That's one of my favorite things with Blink is Tom's very, you know, high vocals, high pitched. Okay. So he always says, he's like, I sound like I'm like 4.
Just sound like that for sure.
And then you have Mark, kind of a rarity in pop punk. He has a baritone register that most pop punk singers don't really have. You don't really come across that much in pop punk.
Right. Yeah.
Which again, I love, and I love how unique his voice is. And then when you bring the two together, man, I love dynamics. I love dynamics in songs. I love it when you have, different vocals complementing each other. And then when they come together to harmonize, man, it's just so unique sounding. I can't pin it down.
Yeah. It's very catchy. It's very just ear candy for sure.
But this song's great. It's usually one of the ones I recommend when I recommend this album.
Oh, cool.
Nice. And then we get into Down. Again, experimental, like very... this is one of the singles, and to me, this just doesn't sound like a normal single that I would imagine. Very timeless feel. Love the guitar, love the vocals in the verses and everything, and then just a chorus that's kind of similar to "I Miss You," just very simple,
Okay.
Just Mark saying "down, down, down, down," and it's just like, wait, what? This song's interesting, this has grown for me. I remember when I first heard this song, I didn't really care for it all that much, but man, this has just grown to be like one of my favorite songs on this album. Like I listen to it so much. Wallied, what were you thinking with Down?
Yeah, I thought this one was all right. I did like the down, down, down surprisingly on the song. I really liked the pianos a lot. Again, kind of like with "I Miss You," I feel like the high-pitched vocals weren't really working for me all that much on this on this track. Unfortunately, it just felt kind of like out of nowhere, just kind of out of place on the song. And I think it kind of, and I don't mind high-pitched vocals, but I think it just sounds a bit like a 4-year-old, like you were kind of mentioning. But yeah, I thought it was all right for sure.
I love the outro. I love the drums and everything. The beat on this song is super great. I love they add all these layers and then they kind of take it away. I love the moment right before kind of the chorus hits and you just get this subtle whisper of the lyric and it just says, "This can't be the end." Then boom comes in tidal waves. They rip right through me. Like that's just, man, that's great.
Yeah.
I just love those rhyme schemes in general. Tears from eyes worn, cold and sad. Pick me up now. I need you so bad. Like that's great. I've really just grown to love this song. It is really fun to play on guitar too.
Cool.
I just, when you're playing this on guitar and you realize kind of the chords it goes through in the chorus and everything, or not even the chorus, just that build up, the little pre-chorus. I don't know, maybe that's where I've kind of had an appreciation for this song. And it has become one of my favorite songs on this album. All right, next track. If I were to have any downside with this album, it would be this interlude.
Really?
It's the Fallen Interlude. I just have never really cared for it. I feel like this is where we're kind of coming into Travis's kind of hip hop influences that he grew up with. And it works. It's there. I feel like we continue on with Down into like this kind of new era. But for me, the vocals and everything, I just never really find myself coming back to it, if I'm being honest. And I feel like it builds into Go, but not as well as I really would have liked it, Mm-hmm. Again, if I had only downside to this album, it probably would be this interlude. And I've been listening to this album for, the 20 plus years it's been out, and this song has never really changed for me. When I was a kid, I didn't really care for it. Middle school, high school, now I'm an adult, still just doesn't really do anything for me, if I'm being honest. Wallied, what were you thinking with this interlude?
Yeah, quite the opposite. I actually really loved this interlude a lot.
Nice.
It's definitely one of my favorites for sure. I love the pianos on this track. I loved the crisp drums on it. I thought the drum break was a big surprise. That was really great. Really showed off like Travis Barker's style of drumming really well. For me, I thought the vocals really worked for me a lot. It felt like, for me at least, it felt like I was like kind of slowly sinking into like the floor floor of like, especially after hearing the down, down, downs, it feels like a nice little progression into that, you know, going down and kind of sinking into this kind of rabbit hole that the album like has sucked me into so far.
Yeah.
So I would say personally for me, I really do love it. Again, kind of like with the interlude thing, I do kind of just wish it was like part of the Go track, because honestly, it's like, it's so great that I feel like it would be a nice like intro to Go rather than just it being its own thing.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe later on down the road. But granted, like when I listen to this album, like front to back, I let this song play through. I don't skip it. But I just have never really found that moment where I'm like, I want to hear the Fallen Interlude. You know, I just haven't been there yet. But who knows? Maybe it might happen. Then we get on to another track that for me is just a really great track. Really just, man, this song is super emotional, super, you know, aggressive, and doesn't really go in a direction that I thought they would. And it's under 2 minutes, you know, crazy.
That's insane.
It's called Go. And man, right out the gate, just comes right at you. The lyrics are so sad.
And it's so funny that it has that juxtaposition, considering it has like this high energy instrumental and you're just really hearing like the most devastating lyrics.
Crazy. So Mark describes this situation when he was a kid, of being, you know, young and witnessing your parents fighting, you know, and this wasn't his grown-up dad. This was his stepdad. And these are where these kind of angsty feelings that we see a lot in Blink kind of come from, of being from broken homes, you know, Tom, Mark, Travis, that is where this band was kind of an escape for them, you know, from these broken homes. And it was a moment of almost kind of forcing happiness into their lives, you know. That's kind of what Blink is for them, you know. And we get these lyrics where Mark describes this moment of trying to get away from this, you know, abusive stepfather, getting his mom, getting all this stuff, getting in the car, and they're trying to hide and they're trying to get away from this person. And Mark describes this moment of his mom, they're in the car, they're ready, and she just is like, there's nowhere to go, you know. And man, that's a heavy situation to see. And especially Mark, he was really young at the time. What is that like to see your mom getting abused and everything and going through hell and she can't escape from it? Like, man, that's dark. And it's all packaged into this song. And I just love this track. I love the vocals that Mark has. I love when Tom comes in, just aggressive, go, you know. And then there's this moment where it's just all taken away and Mark's just saying, I don't want to know. And man, it's just so good. I love this song. I love hearing this song live, man. This has just an energy to it that you can just tell is deeply personal to the people who wrote it, you know. But it's great. I really love this song. Wallied, Go. I know you told me this was one of your favorites. What were you thinking with this one?
It is one of my favorites. It is such a fantastic track. It's so crazy. Like the track is so high paced and so like kind of like happy sounding, oddly enough, you know, like with like the very heavy guitar riffs and everything like that. Lyrically, it's so heartbreaking. It is so incredible. And for me, I see the track as like he's reliving past trauma, basically. And especially the line that I think hits so hard for me is where he sings about his mom losing hope and comparing like the broken heart to like a dead engine. Right. It's just, it hurts to listen to for me. And it's just like, it's so devastating. And it shows how people can be so broken and how trauma can come from the parents a lot of the time, you know, that a lot of it stems from things that happen when you're a kid, you know, and you're trying to bring, you're trying to get those pieces back when you do get more and more older. So for me, it's a very fantastic track. It's very hard hitting for sure. And it's probably one of the most fascinating juxtapositions I've listened to in any album, honestly.
It really shows a different side to those, toxic relationships. Granted, I'm pretty sure at most points in people's lives, you've had friends where you've seen them in those relationships and you try to kind of influence them to, this isn't the best situation for you. This isn't good for you. You need to get out of it. And sometimes it's just not possible. I think people need to realize that when they have those friends and people that they know that are in these toxic relationships, sometimes that's their whole world. Sometimes there is no escape. Sometimes, you can say things in the most perfect way. You can dissect their emotions and everything. But at the end of the day, sometimes they have to go back to that situation, which is very depressing and it's hard. But man, like this song just shows that other side to kind of toxicity that is really kind of understated,
Right. And even the go, 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 I just feel like it's like an escapism for him basically to like escape from this trauma that he keeps reliving and that he's just so, it keeps playing for him like a film and everything.
Yeah.
Also, so.
Really great track. Really, really just different,
like everything on the album.
Yeah, really though. Then we get into an interesting track, Asthenia. It starts with this build up, just like this weird, you're in this weird space, it's almost like its own interlude, but part of the song, you hear like these kind of samples of these, it's like a transmission or something. You hear this rocket blasting off. I feel like in this song, you really see the seeds of what kind of grows into Angels and Airwaves, and grows into where Tom has like these kind of long intros, things like that. I love this song. I love the beats of this song. This song for me, really kind of catchy. Love the guitar sounds in this song. Love the bridge, man. It's weird. This is a great track for me. I will say Tom's vocals can sound, very adolescent, very high pitched and everything. But I feel like on this song, it works for me really, really well. And I love the lyrics, man. Like these are just amazing, Wallied, what were you thinking with this song?
This one was great. I can't believe I'm saying it, but the high pitched vocals like really worked for me this time on the track. And I think it helped with the build up and everything too also, because it helped to feel a lot more explosive in the track, and it feels a lot more earned and satisfying to listen to. I loved how passionate it was for me, and I felt like all the tension was just finally released on this track. It feels like it's just an explosion of like, again, like I was mentioning on the other track, like an explosion of emotions and like this great just like blow up of everything that you've just listened to. And I love the chorus of this track. It's fantastic. And lyrically, it's great for me, my interpretation of like not going back to that dark place and not reliving through that trauma and everything. And I just love how hopeful this song is. And I feel like, honestly, like you need a track like this on an album like this, because past this point, it's been so like, you're going through the trauma, you're going through a lot of these dark lower point moments. And I love just how hopeful this song is. It gives me so much hope of like, there's a brighter future and there's a bright light at the end of the tunnel.
I love the kind of comparisons of being in, space, like that's interesting. Being kind of untethered from everything else below you is such a great kind of vision to kind of pull from, some people might think it's cheesy, but this time where you Houston, is somebody out there, will somebody listen? I like that lyric, and I like how he draws those comparisons from things that, we can only imagine, I'm never going to go to space. I'm not going to know what that feels like.
Right. Yeah.
But man, I like that. I like that kind of imaginative side of songwriting,
Yeah, for sure.
It's really great. And obviously just the core, should I go back? Should I go back? Should I feel alone and tired. And then the progression, this time I don't want to, that's great. I really like this song.
Same. It's great.
Super.
It's easily one of my favorite tracks.
Super awesome. Then we get into another one of the singles, and
okay. Nice.
Wow. This song, for me, really has grown on me over, the past 10 years. I just really love this song. It's called Always. And we start out, again, different, just this kind of drumstick kind of build up. And this song just goes in places that I wasn't expecting. Like from that intro, you hear this drum thing going off, and then you hear the bass come in, and then the guitars. And I feel like this is like the most kind of stripped back song, it just really sounds like the three of them, just talking over them, writing chord structures and things like that.
Yeah.
And you get this great emotionless kind of delivery from Tom. I've been here before a few times, and I'm quite aware we're dying, like he just sounds super like, here we are again,
kind of out of it.
Yeah. And I love that. And then just the buildup of everything. In your hands they shake, the goodbyes, and I'll take you back if you had me. And then the buildup. So here I am, I'm trying. Man, that just feels so good. I just love this song so much. And then it kind of goes into like this kind of provocative kind of chorus, come on, let me hold you, touch you, feel you always. Really great. I don't know. This song for me is just like really emotional, but again, just really kind of stripped back. Wally, what were you thinking with Always?
Nice. I thought this one was pretty solid. I really liked it a lot. For me, I very much felt like this. It felt like an old, oddly like nostalgic, like melancholy to the track that I really liked. I will say I liked the second half a little bit more than the first half. It did take me a bit to get into, but once the second half like kicks in, I really loved it a lot. I love the synths in the outro. Yeah, they're so good. Sorry, it did take a bit to get into the vocals also, but I really did love the range of like vocal variety on this track for sure.
I love Mark kind of having those harmonies in the chorus and everything. Man, again, when those two come together, it just really works for me. I love the outro, the kind of instrumental outro and everything, just really great. And the song just builds, it has that stripped back beginning. And you end in a place with all these synths going off, these vocals, and it's just like, whoa, like, where am I? This song just really grows, you know?
You're kind of in another space with this track, which I really like.
Yeah. I wouldn't picture this as like a single. It is same. 4 minutes, but man, this is really great. This is
more power to them.
One of my favorites. And then we get into, I just want to say like a very kind of industrial sounding song called Easy Target.
Big surprise.
Again, you had that kind of synthy stuff in the last song, and now here we are, just comes at you right away with these drums and everything. One of the cool things with the background of recording this song, Travis recorded each kind of hit individually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Huh. So he has like these different, percussion instruments, and they stacked them on each other so that way they don't sound all muddled and over compressed or anything. So when you get these instrumental hits in the beginning, you're just like hit with all these things that it's just like, wait, what am I listening to?
Cool.
And then this guitar comes in, and the vocals are just absolutely amazing. Just very angsty, very just dark and everything. I love the build on this song. And then obviously one of the best parts, it just transitions into that next song super well.
Yeah.
Wallied, what were you thinking with Easy Target?
I really liked this one a lot. I love the backing vocals on this track, and the high energy of this track is fantastic. It's nice to see the high energy back again on this track. Really great chorus again, like I've mentioned. I really love the line that stood out to me that I thought was great was Southern California's breeding mommy's little monster. It's kind of funny, but also kind of sad, you know, especially from everything you've heard, especially like on the track Go. It's like an interesting kind of little callback to that.
Yeah. No, really though. I love the whole, she's got a mission and I'm collateral damage. She's the flower that you place on my casket. Really great kind of rhyming schemes and everything. Yeah, I don't know. This is a very interesting, unique track. Love the outro, the whole run, 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 run. I don't know. This song is just really great for me.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you get this guitar that we've heard, really aggressive, sliding up and down the neck, you know, using these octaves and everything. And it's in the outro and it just keeps slowing down. And it's just like, where's this going, you know? And then we get into the next song, which, man, I just love that transition. All of this.
Great transition. Yeah.
It's the same guitar riff. Now it's acoustic and just this different drum beat comes in, you know? And it's just like, wait, what? What's going on, you know?
Yeah.
And then one of the very few times Blink-182 ever has a feature.
Oh, okay.
Robert Smith of The Cure.
Which is crazy. That's insane.
Really insane. His vocals come in and
he's fantastic, by the way, on the track.
Amazing. Blink always talks about The Cure, one of their biggest influences. Mark has always said Simon Garfunkel playing the bass in one of their music videos. That's the reason he played the bass, was he saw that guy, you know, in the music video.
Oh,
he's
cool.
Like, he thought it was like the coolest thing he had ever seen. So obviously, like later on, he asked, you know, for his parents for a bass, you know. So it's super awesome that now the inspiration of, you know, your music collaborating with you on a song, man, like I can't imagine what that would feel like. That has to be super surreal. And then for it to just turn out really well, you know, Robert Smith really complements this song in a great way.
He surprisingly fits this. Yeah. I was not expecting that at all.
It's really awesome. And this is a really, really great track. He sounds super emotional, you know, and then when the chorus comes in with Tom, just, it works really well. Wallied, what were you thinking with all of this?
It's great. I love the instrumental on this track. I love like the subtle progressions throughout, whether I add like a different like little guitar note or like a different drum hit, especially in the second half. The Robert Smith feature is fantastic. It really fits like the melancholy and like angst of this song. And I love kind of like a little bit of like the back and forth that Robert Smith has with the singer on this track also. Yeah. I thought that was really awesome. And it also just feels like a nice like full circle moment for them too. You know, like hearing that The Cure was a big influence for them. And then, you know, they get Robert Smith on the song. It's like, that's a really awesome like full circle moment.
Really. I love the little, I love the lyric, she's all I need, she's all I dream, she's all I'm always wanting. Like, man, that's great. It's just really, really awesome. And this track takes its time, you know, it's 4.5 minutes.
I know. Yeah. That's
it really
shocking.
Fills the space, you know, it doesn't feel repetitive at any point. It just has a nice somber feel to it, you know?
Definitely. Yeah.
It's really awesome. And then we get into the next track. We're kind of in the last stretch of it. Here's Your Letter. This song is definitely one that has grown on me. I will say, when I first heard this album, this song does kind of sound different from everything else. But I really like Mark's lyrics on here, you know? I love the cut the skin to the bone, fall asleep all alone, hear your voice in the dark. I love that. I love all the lyrics in this track. I love the riffs and everything, the drums. Wallied, what were you thinking with Here's Your Letter?
It's great. Yeah, I love the riffs on this track. For me personally, it feels like the climax song of like a coming of age film, which I love that a lot. The vocals are fantastic. And honestly, it's like a great like penultimate track to the album and everything. You know, it feels like a nice, like, we're about to get to like the end of everything you've just listened to, which I really love.
I love the part where the bridge mark, I'm talking to the ceiling. My life just lost a meaning. Do one thing for me tonight. I'm dying in the silence. I love that whole bridge area. Man, Mark just really, for me, he knows how to write some of the most interesting bridges where I feel like they just bring a song to a different level. You know, it just totally changes the vibe and everything.
Yeah. It makes me miss bridges too. I feel like there's not enough bridges in music now.
I feel like artists are like scared. They're scared to do that, you know, because it's almost like you're writing like a separate song within your song. But man, if you can nail that bridge in such a great way to build back up to your chorus, it pays off in a great way.
Easily, yeah.
So yeah.
And it makes you want to re-listen to the song too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
God. All right. Anyways, a little rant about music culture. We get into the final track, but there's one track past this that I want to mention. We get into a track, I'm Lost Without You. Man, this one really is great for me. This song really does help convey those emotions that you feel when you're going through, you know, the bad times. It starts out just really, you know, there's just this piano somberness, and Tom's vocals are they're kind of a little buried, you know, just maybe a little hidden, but I think that adds to when the chorus comes in that, man, it's like this punch, you know?
Yeah.
What were you thinking with I'm Lost Without You?
I really liked this one. I really loved the piano break in the middle of the track. I really loved the vocals on this one. I really liked the repetition of the track a lot for sure. I kind of see it as him like he's going in circles. He's feeling lost again. He's back to this like square one repetition that we've been hearing throughout the album. Surprise drum break at the end was shocking. I really liked that.
That was great.
I would say my only complaint is maybe it's just personal preference for me, but I do wish it was a lot more explosive and distorted.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like it would have been like a really great like grand finale to like the album and everything, and showing like the insanity and the more of like what he's going for with lyrically with like him losing his mind. I think that would have made for like a harder hitting ending for sure, but I did really like it.
That definitely would have been an interesting way to go. I love the chorus, the Are You Afraid of Being Alone? Because I'm lost without you. Love that vocal delivery. Just that melody is just, wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's emotional. And I don't know, it really kind of has a finality to it that if, you know, you're following this band story, if it were to end with this album and that was it, man, that would just be such a explosive kind of ending, you know? And it was such an interesting way to kind of tie off this whole project of just, you know, left turns, right turns, you know, and then you arrive at this ending song. And it's almost like I couldn't place that it would be this emotional and this personal, but the fact that it hits really well, you know? You had this whole album of build up, you arrive at this song, and it's just such a great finality to it.
Yeah, for sure.
I told Wallied, for you Blink fans, that there was another track that was recorded for this album that unfortunately wasn't put on the actual release. Yet for the European release, it was on there as the final track.
That's so strange. Yeah. Like, because there's some albums that I really love, and then they'll have like bonus tracks for like the Japanese releases. Yeah. That is so strange.
It is strange. And this song was recorded at the time.
Okay.
It just never came out in America until Blink-182 had their greatest hits album, and it was put on there.
Of course, it's for the greatest hits
album. And man, I can just so vividly remember hearing this song for the first time. I was moving from Colorado to a different state, and I was leaving this whole kind of life behind, you know, but I didn't want to leave. You know, I was a kid, and I had friends. I felt like I was becoming comfortable with myself, you know? And I think this is where I started to realize, like, okay, I have this kind of uncomfortable feeling about myself. I don't really feel, at the time I didn't really feel comfortable in who I was, and I remember leaving that state, and my brother, he was with my dad in the U-Haul driving up to, our new house and everything. And we were in two different vehicles, and I was in the van, driving behind it with my mom. And we arrived at this stop point, and we switched vehicles, and I went in the U-Haul, and my brother was like, here's my CD player. You can listen to it. Because there was like no radio or whatever in it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And he had the Greatest Hits album in there. And I remember listening to it. Obviously, I was still into Blink, but wasn't completely, into them. And hearing this Not Now song really just cemented my love for this band. And me personally, like, this is my favorite Blink-182 song. I swear this song for me is just on another level. And it's about this moment where you've died, yet you haven't really realized it yet. And you have this person that you love who's next to you. They've seen you die, and you want to talk to them and you want to say goodbye, but the moment's passed, and you're looking at your body in like this other world, and wow, that is such a great idea for like a song, I love this song. I still don't know why this wasn't on the actual album. I'm just like confused, because this really kind of adds like a finality to everything, Yeah. Love the lyrics, love the chorus, love the build on everything. This is just one of my favorite songs ever written. Wallied, you don't have those same expectations. Right. So feel free to rip apart this song by any means. But I know I sent it to you because I was like, this song for me is just so synonymous with this album that I just don't want to leave it off,
Yeah, for sure. I was surprised. I actually really liked this song a lot. And I'm actually a little disappointed this wasn't the closer on the album, because I feel like hearing the lyrics and everything, it's like, granted, it's a lot darker for sure. It's not like super hopeful, but it's still like really fascinating to hear. And it's like an interesting perspective on death that I haven't really heard too often in like music and everything like that. But I really loved the instrumental. Like, obviously, like, it's fantastic. It's probably one of my favorite instrumentals I've heard from Blink-182.
Yeah.
The vocals I really liked a lot. Again, kind of the same thing. I do kind of wish it was a little bit more explosive at times. And I do kind of wish it did have a bit more of that distortion, so it could feel a little bit more like explosive and more like, like this grand finality to like, now that you're dead and everything, I would just say that's my only complaint, but I was surprised. I really liked this. I'm actually like, this could have been the closer for sure. But I liked it. I really liked it a lot.
It just adds such a finality to everything. This song has just the most amazing instrumentals, like the guitar, it's absent at parts in the song, comes back, has the overdrive, has all the fuzz and everything. And then in the chorus, it goes to this acoustic guitar riff and really kind of carries the song, And then for me, just a great part, just the outro. Mark is doing harmonies. He's a little hidden, but I still can hear him, and I just love that added layer. Maybe I guess that would be my only thing.
It's a little haunting.
I wish he was on the song maybe a little more, but I don't know. Just the whole lyric, please stay until I'm gone. I'm here, hold on. To me, I'm right here waiting. That's great. Yeah. That's amazing. That is just some of the best songwriting I've ever heard. And maybe one day I'll make sense of it, when I pass on. Maybe
You'll hear it in heaven.
Will hit a little harder. But man, this is just such an important song for me.
Cool. Awesome.
I'll just say with this album in general, this is just for me one of the most defining moments of my life. This would, if I had to give people, 5 albums to listen to kind of explain who I am and kind of get across my whole mentality and everything. This is number one. This would be just absolutely, here's this album, listen to it. Like, I can't begin to describe the impact that Tom, Mark, Travis have on my life. You know, some of the things I do, some of the interests that I have, they wouldn't be there without these three people. And I, in some ways, yes, I do put them on a pedestal a little bit. Sometimes, you know, they'll release songs that aren't necessarily the greatest, but I just can't help it. Like, I don't know what it is. I just always enjoy hearing them, whether they're featured on tracks or whether they're producing music. It's just something that I always look forward to. And, you know, there's been moments in this band's history where we've almost lost a few members from this band. And, man, I'm just super glad that they're here today. Like, I got to see them in concert last year. And, that was my first concert I ever went to when I was 16 was Blink. And to see it now that I'm older, man, it's just like, I don't know what it is. I'm just super fortunate that I get to see my favorite artist live. You know, I get to be a part of that crowd and everything and feel that kind of energy, you know, you're all kind of linked together in this one moment, this area. This band's just super important to me. And again, this album really has just grown for me throughout the years. You know, it just changes each time I listen to it. I just hear new things. I just have a new appreciation for it. And again, just another shout out. This is one of the few instances where I've heard a band reference a producer in such an interesting way. I've never heard a band say this person is a member of our band. They don't play with us. They're not on stage, you know, singing, but they're still a part of who we are, you know?
Yeah.
And it's so unfortunate that Jerry Finn passed away. This was their last album they recorded together. It's man, I just can't even imagine what kind of music they would have made today if he was still around. And you just hear such amazing stories. Every band who has ever worked with Jerry Finn just had such the highest opinion of him. He wasn't secretive with his knowledge on producing. If anyone were to ask him, how'd you do that? How'd you make that sound? You know, he would always be the first one to show you, like, oh, this is how it worked. You know, he wasn't secretive with anything, especially now in music, producers, they kind of hide a lot of their tricks, you know, things.
Yeah. Like magicians.
Really, though. Just great. Yeah. And this is just one of the reasons why I love music. You know, nice. I really can't say that enough. But Wallied, closing thoughts. What were you thinking with this album? I know I had such high expectations and I just kind of threw them at you. But again, thank you for listening to it in like an open way. You know, I know you've heard songs and you probably had this kind of predetermined notion on Blink and what they are. But I feel like this album really subverts a lot of those expectations.
It definitely did, for sure. This really did take me by surprise. I was actually shocked how much I really liked this album a lot. Mm-hmm. It kind of reminded me a little bit of one of my favorite punk artists, Jeff Rosenstock, actually, funny enough, and just vocally at times and things like that. But really, like, I just loved the instrumentals on this. I loved how catchy a lot of the choruses were. And the story and concepts it goes for, maybe it's just for me, I'm a sucker for concept albums and everything like that. So I really liked the concepts a lot on this album, and especially like a song like Go, it hits so hard for me, you know, personally and emotionally, and it surprisingly connects a lot with me. And there's a lot of moments where I feel like this oddly kind of nostalgia that I've never had, even though I've never heard a lot of the songs from this album. But yeah, this was surprising. Like, I just really liked this a lot. Like, this was a really fun album to listen to. Just an overall, just like a really great time and a really emotionally hard hitting time too, that I just was not expecting, you know, considering some of the tracks I had heard from Blink before, you know, and I'm very grateful that I went into this very open-minded and without any like bias, even though I kind of had a bit of an idea of what I thought it was going to be. I liked that it subverted it and it was like, actually, no, we're doing this instead. So really liked this overall.
Man, like, I can't even begin to describe what it was like to have this album and everything, you know, starting to find out you're a fan and then hearing that they're broken up was just like, wait, what the hell?
That sucks. I've felt that many times.
Yeah. Man, that was just crazy. Such a crazy situation. Hopefully one day we'll talk about more Blink stuff. I mentioned to Wallied kind of the pre-lead up to this album was this side project called Boxcar Racer. That even delves more into the influences, Descendants, Fugazi, things like that, to that whole post-hardcore. Yeah. Nice. So hopefully one day we'll talk about that.
Sounds up my alley.
But yeah, honestly, I think you might really enjoy that one. If I were to recommend 4 tracks, if you don't have time for this whole album, but I really recommend you listen to it all. But if you don't, I have 4 tracks I'd pick. Feeling This obviously would be a great one. It's funny I said obviously, and there's a song called Obvious.
I was gonna say.
But Feeling This, Stockholm Syndrome, Always, and then Not Now. Those would be the 4 I'd recommend.
Okay,
I know
cool.
Not Now is typically not on this album, but man,
we'll just say it's the closer, the real closer of the album.
I'm not about to do a review of a greatest hits album just to talk about that song. So I'm putting it on this album. Those nice. 4 tracks, check them out. If you've heard Blink before and you feel like you know who they are, trust me, this album just goes in a direction that you might not be ready for. Wallied, what about you?
For me, I would say Obvious. That's a pretty obvious one, no pun intended. I really love that one a lot. Really got me more into liking the album a lot more and everything.
Yeah.
I will say Go is a really fantastic one. That's one that just hits for me really hard and everything. For the Cure fans out there, I'll say All of This. That's just such a great track. I love just the slow burn of it. I love the progression on that track. And Robert Smith is obviously very fantastic on the track. And then I'll say an interlude. I'll say the Fallen Interlude.
Wow.
That was one I really loved. I know you're not a big fan of it, but I thought it was fantastic.
I mean, that's great.
Yeah. So great. Yeah, those would be my personal 4 favorites.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you guys for joining us. I know this is probably a long one. Again, it's just for me, when I talk about my favorite things, I just can go on and on.
Yeah. And we want to make sure we give it the time of day and everything too. Also,
I apologize. And also this album, it's not the shorter albums that we've been doing, the 8-track stuff.
Yeah. This one's like 16 counting the bonus one.
Yeah.
But
this is definitely a longer album. So thank you guys for joining us. If you're a Blink fan, let us know your favorite albums, things like that.
Yeah. Or if you're a newcomer.
Yeah. Newcomer, check this out. Like, please, I hope you enjoy it. There's just a certain camaraderie I feel when I see people in public and they have the album art tattooed on them. I'm just like, I want to have a conversation with you,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just great. But
nice.
Yep. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll have more album reviews hopefully soon.
Yeah, hopefully, definitely.
We actually are talking, we have new albums coming out that we're interested in, so maybe we might take a stab at those. Who knows? But yeah, thank you guys for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you on further reviews. So
yeah, definitely. Good day and good night, mates.
We'll see you on the next one.